I am now joined by Zahra Sultani, Director at Loyalist Public Affairs, and Michael Diamond, Principal of the Upstream Group. Thank you both for joining me on Counterpoint.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Great. So, just to start off, it's been a monumental week for the Conservative Party. I'll start with you, Michael. What went wrong for Erin O'Toole?
Look, I think what went wrong for Erin O'Toole was from the moment he pivoted away from being the true blue candidate for leader and then losing an election as, frankly, a moderate red Tory. It was a strategy that made it, he had to win the last election to avoid facing the membership of the Conservative Party of Canada at some point. He really soured himself with that base and with that electorate, and I think a convention vote was going to be very difficult for him. And when he refused to make any changes, be it personnel or strategy changes, right after the last election, I think it was a sign that he wasn't going to change. He wasn't going to revert to that true blue person that the Conservative Party members elected very impressively in 2020, and that it was going to be up to caucus to really deal with it. And I think that's what we ultimately saw last week when they took it upon themselves to end his leadership.
So, Zahra, I think Michael has, politely described it as a pivot. Many would describe it as a flip-flop. Do you feel that part of O'Toole's undoing was in some sense a lack of authenticity, or for voters across the country and even Conservatives really knowing what he stood for?
It was, and I think what I agree with you that most would describe it as a flip-flop. You know, he ran for leadership in a completely different tone, and he had a completely different narrative, and that's what the members of the Conservative Party voted for. But as soon as he became leader, and during the campaign, we saw a much more softer and much more center-left kind of candidate and the campaign. So I think probably it is my personal opinion that the real Erin was the Erin that ran for leadership. But, campaigns do matter, advisors matter. And I think what we saw was probably a bunch of not very helpful strategies and advices that led to him really losing his voice and losing sort of his way in terms of what a Conservative leader should stand for and should be about.
And so, Michael, for what a Conservative leader should stand for, from your view, do you feel that this is an exciting time for the party to maybe re-examine what that means, what it means to be a Conservative in today's age?
Absolutely. And I think that's both from a partisan internal political perspective, but also from a public policy perspective, that the disdain that Erin O'Toole held the Conservative Party membership in, where he flip-flopped on a carbon tax, which was voted upon at last year's convention, that we'd maintain our traditional opposition to it, for example, to his flip-flops on guns, to his refusal to meet the membership at a annual general meeting to have a expedited leadership review. I think we now have an opportunity to really elect someone from the grassroots. And I think, obviously there's one very prominent candidate who's already out there with over 1 million views on Instagram and over 2 million views on Twitter with Pierre Poilievre. I think it's really quite amazing what he's been able to do by just being a very plain-spoken, no-nonsense Conservative who isn't going to back down because media push against him, isn't going to back down because he wants to be acceptable at Liberal cocktail parties. And really, I think for Conservatives, he'll stand up for what it means to be a Conservative Party member, but also present Canadians with a Conservative vision for the country, which will definitely resonate with members come voting time.
Yeah, I think you raise a very good point about Pierre Poilievre. That's certainly the impression from partisans. I'll go generally for you, Zahra. What do you think the general public is going to feel in regards to Pierre Poilievre's approach to politics? Because it certainly is something different than what we're used to.
Yeah. I think his personal style, being considered a bit more edgy and more frank, I think that's something that the general public appreciates, and that's probably why there's been so much interest in him announcing that he's running for leader. I think there is an advantage and there's disadvantages to that as well. I think he's been able to pose himself as a, what we call the real blunt conservative that will fight for you, that will fight for the little guy. But with that comes certain hesitations in different parts of the party.